So starting in verse 12, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. What's the point here? What's going on? And so he actually is being very pointed in what he's saying, and he is making a point. And it's cultural. And the quotes are, all things are lawful for me. And this is where the distortion takes place. How they viewed sex revealed their understanding of how they viewed God's grace. Sex reveals our understanding of God's grace. See, Paul came telling a story of the gospel, which is a story of grace that is available to everybody. That God is so gracious, he comes to us, he seeks after us, and he died on the cross to forgive us of any sin. That is really good news. Right? That we have this free forgiveness, that we are broken. We are broken of things worse than just our eyesight, right? The way we think about things, the things that we do, they hurt ourselves, they hurt other people. But the good news, we are saved. Jesus took our sin on the cross. He saves us. Jesus died on the cross. He's taking your punishment. But what happened in the Corinthian culture, and maybe what happens even in our culture, is that we take grace and we twist it to mean, well, God forgives, so what does it matter? All things are lawful. God forgives me of everything, so I can do what I want, right? Maybe you've heard that logic before when it's applied to some area, when it's applied to the area of sex. Well, dude, everybody has sex before marriage, right? That's what you do. It's just pornography. What? It's not. You're not really cheating, right? It doesn't matter. What's the point? God's just going to forgive you. And what Paul is saying, no. Distortion takes place. Put your glasses on. Open your eyes. That type of living, it's blind. It's going to cause you to harm yourself and others, and it's not the way that God intended. And here's the thing about God's grace. Yes, it saves you from sin, right? But it's meant to bring you out of sin, not to give you an excuse to stay in it. God doesn't want you to stay in something that will harm you or others. Paul is telling the Corinthians to live countercultural. Put the glasses on. See things the way that God intended you to see them. Live in that way. True freedom is living a life that you were designed to live by God. So how we respond to living in the confines of sex that God created reveals our understanding of God's grace. And so that's my question for you. How do you view God's grace? It is wide open. It's wide open to you. But it's not an excuse to do what you want. Romans 6, if you have time this week, you can read it. It's a wonderful illustration of grace and walking with Jesus, and how when we sin, yes, grace increases. Grace is always there to meet you every step of the way, but it's also the power that is meant to change our lives. Jesus puts to death our sin so that, what Paul uses this terminology, is that we become slaves not to sin, but slaves to righteousness. We sin, yes, grace increases. We go to Jesus in that sin. Grace is meant to move us toward Jesus, not move us toward sin. So, question, how do you move toward Jesus in your grace or in your sin? How do you move towards grace in that sin? That's my prayer for all of us, is that sin wouldn't keep us in some kind of shame that just causes us to repeat the cycle over and over again, but moves us towards the loving arms of Jesus. How do you view God's grace?